Okay, let's unpack this. The UK government is, well, reportedly thinking about putting 50 million into something that sounds straight out of science fiction.
Yeah, dimming the sun. Geoengineering.
Hmm.
It's quite a concept.
Intentionally altering the climate on a massive scale.
And it's that scale, isn't it? Actively managing how much sunlight actually reaches the planet. That's the striking part.
Absolutely. And the material you, our listener, shared with us really gets into the heart of the concerns here. We're not talking small tweaks.
No, not at all. The ideas being floated,
Hmm.
injecting aerosols, tiny particles, way up in the stratosphere.
Right, like a sort of fine dust layer high up.
Exactly. And also brightening marine clouds, making them whiter, basically.
So they reflect more sunlight back out.
That's the theory. Bounce more sunlight back into space. Well, it's a huge undertaking.
It really is planetary level stuff. And I think our job today, based on the info you sent, is to explore the potential ripple effects the concerns raised.
Definitely. We need to understand the implications. So our mission really is to dive into those concerns from the sources without, landing on our own conclusions here.
Exactly, just exploring the arguments. So where should we start? Maybe with the people most directly reliant on the sun, farmers.
Sounds right. We have those points from Derbyshire farmers.
Yes, their concerns seem very grounded, practical.
They really are. Their basic point is, look, sunlight isn't the enemy here. It's fundamental. It's life. It's food.
So this whole idea of dimming, it just feels wrong to them, fundamentally problematic.
Pretty much. They make the obvious link. Less sun means less photosynthesis. Simple as that.
And maybe explain photosynthesis again briefly, why it's so central.
Sure. I mean, it's how plants use sunlight, right, to take water and carbon dioxide and turn them into sugars, their food, basically, and they release oxygen.
The oxygen we breathe, which the YouTube commentary also mentions, actually.
Right. So if you reduce the sunlight, you directly slow that whole process down.
Meaning slower crop growth.
Slower growth, potentially affecting ripening times, and yeah, ultimately, lower yields, less food.
And that hits harder in some places than others.
Definitely. Think about areas with marginal land, shorter growing seasons. They need every bit of sunlight they can get. It's crucial.
And it's not just about how much grows, but the timing, too. They mention worries about rain and seasons.
Exactly. Farming depends so much on predictable weather, stable cycles.
So messing with sunlight could mess with that.
That's the fear. Unforeseen consequences for rainfall patterns, maybe more droughts or floods, or the rainy seasons shifting. Any of that is potentially devastating for farmers.
Okay, and then there's the stuff they propose actually spraying the aerosols. The farmers are worried about where that ends up.
Understandably so.
Yeah.
Where do these tiny particles go eventually? They settle out, right?
So landing on fields, livestock, water.
That's the concern. Contamination. And how do these things interact with, soil life? Pollinators, bees, we just don't know.
They drew a parallel with pesticides, didn't they? Unintended consequences showing up later.
A very powerful parallel, yeah. History teaches us caution there.
They also brought up reversibility. Like, can you actually just stop these experiments if things go wrong?
That's a huge question.
Yeah.
Is it really like flicking a switch? Probably not.
The farmers seem skeptical.
Rightly so, I think. You start blocking sunlight, do you then become dependent on continuing to do it? What happens if you stop?
Some models suggest a sudden temperature spike.
Exactly. A rapid, maybe catastrophic warming if the spraying just ceased abruptly. So a temporary fix could become a permanent, risky necessity.
And beyond the environmental side, the farmers in Derbyshire also talked about power, control.
Yeah, they framed it as a kind of power grab by technocrats, as they put it.
Meaning decisions being taken away from them, from local communities.
That's their perspective. Decisions affecting everyone, affecting the land, being made by centralized bodies, maybe without that local understanding.
It's a stark contrast to the solutions they actually favor.
Completely. They're talking regenerative farming, local food systems, looking after the soil, working with nature, not trying to engineer it on this massive scale.
Right, strengthening natural processes instead of overriding them.
Exactly.
Okay, so moving from the farmer's direct experience, we also have that YouTube commentary. It widens the scope a bit, doesn't it? Public consent, basic science.
It really does. It flags that ethical point first. Where's the public agreement for this? Not just in the UK, but globally.
Because these effects wouldn't respect borders.
Precisely. And the commentator stresses, again, that solar radiation management means less sunlight reaching the ground, which, as we've said, directly impacts food.
And that raises the control question again, but maybe even more starkly, Who holds the thermostat for the planet?
Yeah, who decides how much sun we get? The implications for food security, maybe even controlling populations. It's quite unsettling.
Serious questions about governance, fairness. Who gets that power? What
Yeah.
stops misuse?
hmm And the commentator adds another layer too. Less sunlight potentially means less vitamin D production for people. Another health consideration.
Interesting point. And then the commentary gets into the science of photosynthesis again, but almost questioning the logic.
This is a really interesting bit. The commentator basically says, hang on, photosynthesis removes carbon dioxide from the air, right, and produces oxygen.
Yes.
So if you reduce sunlight, you reduce photosynthesis, which means less CO2 gets removed.
Which seems backwards
Ah.
if the whole point is tackling CO2.
It seems like a contradiction, doesn't it? Reducing the planet's natural way of removing CO2. It definitely needs more scrutiny.
And the scale of the money involved, that 50 million, also raised eyebrows in the commentary.
Yeah, the commentator suggests that kind of money implies serious intent, and even wonders if maybe some activities are already happening, quietly,
That raises issues of transparency, public discussion, doesn't it?
for sure. Are these things being developed without us really knowing?
Okay, finally, let's talk about the wider risks. Ecosystem impacts. Both sources seem concerned here.
And this is where it gets potentially catastrophic, doesn't it? The risk highlighted, particularly, is disrupting monsoons.
In Asia and Africa,
Yeah, weather systems critical for feeding billions of people. If you mess with those, the potential for widespread famine is just huge. Unimaginable, really.
when it might not affect everywhere the same way, uneven impacts.
That's another major risk. You could cool some regions, but others might see little change, or different changes, maybe even negative ones.
Creating disparities, tensions.
Exactly. Resource conflicts, exacerbating existing problems or creating new ones between regions.
And both sources seem to land on a similar point. This feels like treating symptoms, not the actual disease.
That comes through strongly, yeah.
Yeah.
It's tinkering with the Earth's temperature, but not addressing the root cause.
So a temporary Band-Aid, maybe, but one with potentially serious side effects.
That seems to be the argument. A risky Band-Aid at best.
The YouTube commentary also really stressed how complex ecosystems are. Not just the big stuff we see, but microbes, fungi.
Right, the incredible interconnectedness of it all. Things we barely understand yet.
Which makes interfering on a massive scale incredibly unpredictable.
Hugely unpredictable. You poke the system here, and you have no real idea what might happen over there or down the line.
Yeah.
The potential for unintended consequences is enormous.
So the call is for caution, respect for that complexity.
Extreme caution, yes. Respecting those natural balances we don't fully grasp.
And the commentary suggested a simpler alternative for dealing with carbon, didn't it?
It did. Just plant more trees.
Back to working with nature again.
Exactly. Afforestation. It removes CO2. Plus, it has other benefits. Biodiversity, soil health. It's a known quantity, relatively speaking.
Okay, so let's try and sum up the main threads, the key concerns we've pulled from the sources you provided.
Right.
There's the potential harm to farming, food production globally, the lack of public consent, the whole issue of control.
The huge risk of messing with weather patterns like monsoons, causing famine, uneven regional impacts leading to conflict.
Yeah, and the feeling this is just symptom management, not tackling the root cause, the sheer unpredictability of meddling with complex ecosystems.
And that seeming contradiction about reducing photosynthesis when the narrative is about reducing CO2.
It's a lot to weigh up, a really heavy set of concerns.
It absolutely is. And maybe that leaves us, and you listening, with a big question, really.
Which is?
When we're faced with these huge technological ideas for fixing things, for manipulating nature on such a grand scale, how do we properly balance the potential upside against these massive, maybe irreversible, unintended risks?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? No easy answers there.
None at all. But it definitely needs careful thought and, crucially, wide public discussion.